I'd like to welcome everybody here to the memorial for Professor Kojo Dei. Was a beloved colleague for many years and is passed last year, and we took us a little time to get this together, but I'm glad we could come get it together, and I'm glad we have so many people who have come to share their memories and celebrate his life. So I wanted to start by, I'm Anthony Mark, who's the chair, and I wanted to start by asking if there's anybody in his family who'd like to speak first. We have a former chair who was Kojo's close colleague for many, many years who has some words, and then we will open it up to anybody who wants to get up and let the spirit move her. So is there anybody who would like to? No, then why don't we start with... Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, actually, let the chair speak first.
Okay.
He's the chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm really happy that that all of you showed up here today to celebrate, Kojo. The time that he was with us in our department, a very important member of our department. But Kojo and I go back quite a ways, and I don't know whether many people knew that he and I went to school together. We both were students of Lambos Comitas and George Bond. George Clement Bond, the cousin of Julian Bond at Teachers College University. Kojo came the year after me. So we were in a lot of classes together, shared a lot of memories from events way back when we were graduate students. And, there were such people as Margaret Lee at Columbia at the time, and people that are no longer with us, but very fond memories of Kojo at that time. And our careers were very parallel as well, because shortly after or maybe not so shortly, but after I sort of left Columbia for a period of time, dropped out of school actually, I started working at NDRI, which at that time was called Narcotic and Drug Research Incorporated. And Barry Spunt was working there at the time, and Terry First, and Doug Goldsmith, and I haven't seen the other NDRI folks for a while, but not at that time. Not at that time, though. But these are the old guard there, and Kojo was there for a while, and he did a pre-doc fellowship there under Bruce Johnson, and so we ended up being there at the same time, and our interests sort of intersected again. As they had in graduate school, we were interested in kind of the same area, but the same topics, And when he ended up going to do his pre-doc fellowship at NDRI, he took an interest in sort of youth problems and drugs, and mainly in the areas where he lived north of the city. And we were looking more in Brooklyn, so we had a lot of notes to share, myself and Terry and Doug and Barry, and frequently engaged Kojo in sort of conversations that ethnographers would have about the things that they were observing in the field at that time. So out of that came his book, which I think Serena might want to say something about.
I will, of course.
Oh, okay. So I'm not going to say too much about the book.
Oh, even say about the book, I'll just talk about the personal interactions.
Oh, I see. So, well, we found it very sort of stimulating and interesting at the time in sort of looking at the differences that he was finding in his field site, the family situations that the young men were enmeshed in were very similar to the kinds of things that we were seeing in Brooklyn. So we found it very useful to compare notes at that time. In any event, I stayed on at NDRI, and the rest of us all stayed on, and Kojo came to John Jay in I want to say 88 or something. I came in 87, maybe 89. As an adjunct, he came first.
Oh.
He was hired as a full-time, because he came a couple of years as an adjunct, and then full-time he came in 1990. But I think I came, again, like Columbia, I came a year before him as an adjunct, and then he came the year after me as an adjunct. But they hired him real quick as a full-time professor, and I had to wait another 5, 6, 7 years for them to get around to figuring out that maybe they'd hire me, I don't know, But, so Kojo came in 90 maybe, and made an immediate sort of impression upon the faculty and the student body here. Very, very popular professor, obviously giving perspectives that could not really be gotten from a lot of the other professors here that just didn't have the same kind of experiences that he had both in New York City and in international arenas. So we just found that very, in the anthropology department, we need folks like that, and he was perfect for that purpose. And very, very friendly, student-friendly, which I would not say characterizes every professor at John, but he's touch of the imagination, I don't want to speak too much longer, except to say that he was here with us for many years and a valued member of our department. He pulled his weight. He did all the committee work that one would expect of colleagues in a small department. You know what that's like. And his research interests though evolved, I think, in the sense that he started off looking at his own community here in New York City, but he became interested eventually in wanting to study young people, street children in Africa, and we began to develop a proposal that we were going to submit to NIH. It was his goal there, with the idea of a comparative study between several cities. And so I was pretty enthusiastic about working on that, because in our department we've been talking lately about trying to expand our research agenda to an international arena more so than we have. So really disappointing that we weren't able to complete that, but that was really sort of the direction he was going. And I gotta say that given the sort of trends that are on the field right now, he was right on point with that, because it's a very hot topic. I just completed a writing grant with our former colleague Kurt Dombrowski for $3 million basically to do a study of such children here in the U.S. So having to do something internationally and comparatively would have been just a wonderful opportunity for us. And I'm so sorry that he's not here to be with us to carry through that vision that he had, but it's something that I share, and hopefully we'll put that together in the future in his memory, and it's something I think that the students would find very compelling and interesting to do, to compare with what we see here in New York. So anyway, I don't want to talk too long. I really want to turn it over and let others have an opportunity to talk. So I forgot who's next, but maybe someone.
No,
Someone from the family next.
You'll speak first, please. We want to hear it.
I can keep going.
Yes,
but,
yes. We want to hear it.
Well, I'll tell you that the time that we had at Columbia was really memorable. I not so much the classes. It's not really what you learn in the classes; it's the connections that you make and the people that you meet. And this is where I think that my memory of Kojo sort of coincides with my time at Columbia, because God knows I don't remember anything I learned in any classes there. It's always the connection. So. It was always interesting to be with him at events they had, because, he ran in a different crowd than I did, He had different friends and different professors that he worked with. So I always found it sort of an interesting experience for me, because most of the professors ignored me. They wanted to, they did, Well, if you think about it for a minute, Columbia University is a place where, if you saw Evan Mandery's piece in the New York Times a couple of days ago about legacy admissions at Columbia, they admit a lot of their own, And I'm not one of them. My daddy didn't go there, and I don't think Kojo's daddy went there either to Columbia, right? So we're not legacy. We're not. Yeah, exactly. We're not legacy boys there. You know what I'm saying? So we kind of bonded on the basis of the fact that we were outsiders in a way. But nevertheless, I think that, if you're not a legacy appointment, but your daddy got money, they will be interested in you at Columbia. My daddy is dirt poor, So, but Kojo, I think, had sort of a style that was, many professors were drawn to him. I mean, you can see, not for nothing, but a dresser like that, and a dresser like this. Come on, now who are you going to choose to want to chat up, So he was really very popular and very, always had a lively crowd around him. So I always found it very advantageous for me to want to stand next to him at the parties and events we had. So, and being at Columbia, I discovered, as they say, it's not, what you learn, it's who you know. And, you know, he got to know a lot of people there. And, you know, eventually, as I said, made his way to NBRI, where he worked for quite a while. And there were a lot of connections that he made there, both at NBRI and in Washington, D.C., where the money is at, you know. So this is what I think that we were always sort of interested in is that, you know. And most of the anthropologists, I think, that I grew up learning about were people that were really savvy about finding money to support their research, you know. I mean, they were lucky if they got a Wenner Gren thing for $5,000 on something. They thought they hit the jackpot, you know. But you know, Kojo and the people and the folks that we started trafficking with, Doug and so on, and Barry, and it's a different ball game. And so, you know, we're talking about a couple of more zeros after that 5, you know, in some cases. And it's, you know, it's a different world for anthropologists that he had sort of inaugurated with a generation of folks that for whom $5,000 to support their research is not really enough anymore. You know, we have more of a sense of importance and stature in the field than to think that, you know, we can't compete for the prizes that the big boys go for. You know, the sociologists of repute and the psychologists that sometimes get, but we can get them too. And I think that Kojo was an example of that. So, I don't know, you know, but, you know, I gotta say that this is one thing that we're aspiring to in the department is that at least the folks that work with me and Kojo is to blaze a trail for the students that want to do this kind of work. And, you know, one thing, a student came to me from yesterday from, I had to cover a class for a professor that was sick yesterday. Not an unusual thing for me. And first period, no less, 8 a.m., which again, not unusual for me. And after the class, a couple hours later, a student from the class came to see me. And I said, well, what can I do for you? She said, you know, I'm a graduating senior in forensic psychology, and I'd really like to do some research because I want to go to graduate school, but I don't have anything on my resume that could help me show that I've done things, good things, you know. And I said, well, you know, it's too bad you didn't come to see, you know, us earlier because we could have done things for you. And she was complaining that in forensic psychology, there's so few opportunities for students to do any research that it's only a select few that get chosen, the ones that have the A+ averages, and for all of the rest of them, they have to struggle, you know. So, you know, this is the thing that Kojo did, and myself and Doug and some of the others, is we tried to broaden that net and bring in as many students as possible. So Kojo in particular was very giving of the time that he had to devote to students, to improving their work, to helping them think about what kind of research project that they were going to do. It was just, you know, it's a very time-consuming kind of activity, as all professors here will tell you, to work intensively with students. But this was sort of a hallmark of his style, and I think something that the rest of us like to emulate. Well, would like to emulate. It's hard to do that. It's very hard. It's draining to work with him so much. So, well, I think I'm going to stop. I can give some other folks an opportunity to say a word or two, but we sure do miss him around here, and I know the students do too. It's somebody that they really can't replace them. You know, it's not like you can just go out and find somebody that will fill that hole, because they just won't. So, you know, we're doing a search now, in fact, but you know, there's no way to replace what we lost. So, but we're going to keep moving ahead. And in the spirit of the kinds of ideas that Kojo had, I think that what we want to do is provide service to the students and along the lines of the kinds of things that we have in mind. Anyway, thank you. Who else can say something?
But I want other people to say also.
Oh, they will. Don't worry.
Oh.
We won't be shy.
Actually,
You were his first chair.
Rick reminded me of something. Yes, 1999. Rick reminded me of something. Prior to Kojo was the first one. Prior to Kojo, when you had an interview in the department, I remember my interview in Joan Jay, 1974. I won't name the person who interviewed. Maybe it was 1973, I was an adjunct. But in those days, we wore pretty short skirts, and all he kept looking at was my short skirts. And I went home said to my husband, I think I wore the wrong outfit. So, you were hired, a committee of 2 or 3 people sat in the office, and you went in and you said, you know, I want to be here, and this is what I do. I remember his name. You'll remember it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. But you would. Some of the older people who've been here a while would remember who it is, not you. Anyway, but when Kojo applied for the job, I don't know if you remember this. I think you will. There was another anthropologist applying for the job who has become very, very well known. I'm not going to mention his name, although he does wonderful work. There's no question. But Kojo was the first one that we actually made to give us a presentation. Do you remember that? We sat around, 8 of us, or who is, somebody wanted to come in? 8 of us, we sat around, and we told him that instead of a standard interview, he was going to have to give a presentation on his work. And this president, not only was he just so engaging and such a joy, but when the truth is, in our minds, we thought we'd probably hire the other guy because he was very well known, very prestigious, and we were looking at things with an open mind. But I guess we felt, oh, this would be great. He wants to be a John Jay. But after we met Kojo, no contest. We all, after Kojo finished his presentation and went home or whatever he did, we all said, oh, this guy is fantastic, and that was it. So you reminded me that was not in my speech. I was going to make a little different kind of speech. And I do want to say, Edwin, you've heard this before, so don't fall asleep. Okay? Unfortunately, the day he had the church meeting and the funeral, it was a bad time for me, so I did write this, and I did go up to the church, and I apologize that I didn't tell people where it was, because I couldn't stay for the whole service, but I did give this, and I think he said you read it. So you'll be hearing it, but it's a little different. I want to read it, but then say a few other things. Kojo Dei was a beloved friend, colleague, and teacher to the John Jay College community. He was my own dear friend for over 20 years that he was at the college, and I not only valued him as a friend, but also as a colleague in cultural anthropology. Being a cultural anthropologist, you have to be a special, certain kind of person. We all know this, we anthropologists. Other people don't always appreciate it, but we know that it's true. Kojo was that kind of person. His major contribution to cultural anthropology, that is his research, and I brought this book, I sent to the publisher because one of the things we want to talk about later is we hope, as a small token of our esteem and affection, we can all donate one of our books to Kojo, and the library has agreed to put in memorial stickers with Kojo's name on them, so it'll be like a permanent kind of a testimony. I asked the librarian, because there's a lot of bureaucracy, and I said to her, before we all get excited about this project, are you going to be able to do this? And she said she would. So, but anyway, this is Kojo's book. He gave me a copy, which I would not donate under any circumstances. So I called the publisher and I said, listen, can you get a copy of the book to me quick, because I want to. Some people may not be familiar with it.
Did they say yes?
I'm sorry?
Did they say yes? They said yes?
They sent it to me.
Oh, that's the new one.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They sent it to me. In fact, UPS, $5.50 it cost to send. Oh, that was awful nice. And I could have saved them $5.50, but I wasn't going to give them because my copy is inscribed by Kojo. So that.
Mine too.
Yeah, that's something I wouldn't give away. Anyway, Kojo's major contribution in anthropology was his research among Black communities in Mount Vernon and his book, Ties That Bind, Youth and Drugs in the Black Community. This book required intelligence, empathy, very important, fortitude, enthusiasm, and persistence, all of which Kojo embodied, and as we know as anthropologists, if you don't have those qualities, you might as well go into forensic psychology. Kojo's groundbreaking work on this subject, and Kojo was invited to give many seminars and lectures, helped correct many misleading stereotypes about these communities, both among the general public and in academia. And I have to say personally, because, you know, do you remember Scott French or anybody here? Yeah. Scott was a very good friend of mine, and he did some work on drugs, and he used to make fun of me because I said, drugs? I don't even take aspirin. So I'm very anti-drug. And I read this book with some trepidation because I thought, gee, I wonder if Coach and I will agree on, you know, sort of some important things. He persuaded me. He persuaded me that culture enters into it and that these people have been stereotyped negatively, not that taking drugs is a good thing necessarily, but it was a very persuasive book, which is, by the way, I forget the year it was published, 2002, this is now 2014, still going strong, because it says something that permanently affected people's feelings about people they don't really know at all. And thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think about it that way, which is, of course, what we all hope for a student. In any case, Kojo's helped correct many misleading stereotypes. Kojo loved teaching as I did, and this was one of the many things that cemented our deep friendship. I attended many of his classes, and by the way, we're supposed to have office hours in Georgia. I don't mean just anthropology, but everybody. And Kojo's door was always open. You walked by and there was a real live person sitting there and not holding up the New York Times to hide his face so people wouldn't feel like they wanted to come in. And he loved teaching, he loved students. And I went to many of his classes, and the students were always involved in the discussions he provoked, which he and I agreed was the best way for students to learn. Students regarded Kojo as smart and fair. I was chair, so I read evaluations, so I'm not talking just from a personal bias, but from things I actually read that students said. And he was available to speak to them after class. One student said to me, I remember, he stands out as one of the most influential professors in my career. And we've all had experiences, I know, of one student, 5 students. It doesn't sound like a lot in 20 years of teaching, but it means a lot when a student comes back and says, you know, you changed my life. That's what we're here for. Anyway, Kojo felt that way, and so do I, and that was something we both were very close on. To his colleagues, he was known universally for his kindness, enthusiasm, and cheerful personality. As Jill Norgren, who is a friend of mine also through John Jay, and who was very great admiration of Kojo, she said to me, he always greeted me with an irresistible smile. And you know, it doesn't sound maybe like, what's the big deal? So you smile at somebody, but people don't smile all that often. And if somebody greets you with a smile, it was not a phony smile, it was like a smile, like he was glad to see you, sort of a smile from the heart. And it made an awful lot of difference, especially when a lot of people go through difficulties. So Jill told me when we were talking about Kojo, and she said, that's one thing I always remember. He greeted me with this irresistible smile whenever we met. His publisher said, when I told him Kojo died, he felt terrible, of course. And he said he was such fun to work with. When was the last time you heard a publisher say, oh, you're such fun to work with? Doesn't happen too often, as most of us know. A very uncommon compliment in the world of academic publishing. I found Kojo a pleasure to talk to and very wise in a traditional and unique African way. And I have to say, I was just talking with Hannah, who was another very good friend of Kojo's. We were talking about how an outsider sees a culture and how an insider sees a culture. And over the many years that I was friends with Kojo, he came up with things that were just wise. That's the word I would use. The things that made me think, oh, that's a wise thing to do. Things that I just hadn't thought of. Not deep theory or something like that, but just, oh, that's a very wise thing that you said. In a traditional and unique African way. These qualities undoubtedly were what drew him to his latest project, conflict mediation. And I have to say something now on a personal note. My sister and I, my sister's an English teacher, and we wrote 2 anthropological mysteries. One called The Gift of a Bride, about a murder in the Indian community, and another called A Sister Died, about a murder of an old person. In Florida, the idea was to use a murder mystery to get students interested in culture. The books both involved a female anthropologist detective, guess who she was based on, and also noted some things about people in the department and the workings of the department. And in both books, when things got to a kind of impasse among the department members because of bureaucracy or conflict, Kojo is mentioned in the book. We call him Kwame. Name shall be changed to protect the innocent. Kojo came in with his wise African perspective on things and solved the problem. So, by the way, I want to say something about the name Kwame, which we gave him. I have an acquaintance from Ghana. He's not a good friend. But when I met him and he told me he was from Ghana, I said, oh, one of my best friends is from Ghana. His name is Kojo. He said, oh, he was born on a Monday. Because apparently in Ghana, Kojo is Monday, other people are other names.
Saturday.
Yeah, I don't know what Edwin is. But he told me Kojo was Monday,
so
so
on Friday, so it's Kofi, like Kofi Annan.
So I remember coming back the next day and saying to Kojo, oh, I just found out you were born on a Monday. Kojo often mentioned to me, in fact, he had given me some things to read, that he wanted eventually, after his retirement, to return to Ghana to teach, to do research, and to live. And I have to say, one of my own dreams was to visit him in Ghana. That was something I thought, as soon as I get some time and he retires and goes back to his village, I'm going to go to Ghana. I even looked up how to get there by train because I hate to fly. And unfortunately, that is something, sadly, this will not happen. But Kojo will live in the loving memory of his many friends and family. And I do want to say one other person who does not live in New York, Dorothy Bracey, who now lives in New Mexico, and always asked about Kojo. Of course, I wrote her that Kojo had died, and I wrote her that we were having this memorial, and I said, is there anything special you'd like to say? And she said, you know what, of course, she loved Kojo as well. And one of the things she said, you know, Kojo went to school in Germany. I didn't know this either, and he apparently spoke fluent German. And Dorothy, I don't know if she was born in Germany or her parents who came during the war escaped from Germany. And she said, you know, whenever I would see Kojo, he would talk to me in German, knowing that this was an opportunity I never got. And she was so thrilled, and it's true, I don't know how many of you here speak German, I don't. And she was so thrilled because he took the extra effort to talk to her in a language which, in fact, was a language, but which nobody ever talked to. And I have to tell you one other thing that happened. She came to New York, I think, maybe 2 days after Kojo died. And my husband and I went to lunch with her. And I said, oh, I'm going to have to tell Dorothy that Kojo died. And my husband, who's also, being from India, is wiser than I am, said, don't tell her till after lunch. Otherwise the lunch will be spoiled. That's all we'll talk about. So we had a very nice lunch, and then afterwards I said, Dorothy, Robin told me, you know, we have terribly sad news. She knew about that he was ill because, of course, I had written her. And I said, but I have to tell you, a few days ago, his brother emailed me that he died. She said, I'm so glad you didn't tell me before lunch. I could never have enjoyed this lunch had I known this. So the people who knew Kojo really loved him because he was a lovable, wise, wonderful friend. So, I want to say one other thing. I had an idea which the head of the department, I'm going to share the responsibility with you, my dear. And that was, as I said, that we could, those of us who've written a book that we would like to do it, can give one book to the library. They will put in these special stickers. If you have a book you would like to make part of this collection, I guess, is that the correct word? Joni, will you be the person you can give it to Joni Wood, our anthropology coordinating, did I say that right?
That's fine.
Or whatever. Anyway, everybody knows who she is. So we're hoping to get a small collection of books just so there'll be a permanent testament to our feelings about Kojo. Thank you.
Yeah, some of the speakers during commencement.
Pictures of commencement. From which commencement?
John Jay commencement.
Last year?
Gabby said maybe 3 years ago.
Maybe 3 years ago. Okay, we'll put them up, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyone else? I'll put them up here. Oh, very nice.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kamora, and I wanted to especially thank the family for being here tonight. I want to meet each of you afterwards. I meet, as I'm sure all of you do, meet an awful lot of people in the hallways here. And Joni, I think you're the exception, because she and I met in the bathroom. But for everybody else, I definitely meet a lot of people in the hallway. And one day, I was coming out of my office when we were over in the T building. And I saw this incredibly joyful person across the hall from me, and I couldn't help but smile immediately as soon as I saw him. And I said, "Who are you?" And he told me, and we talked. We used to teach classes at the same time in early morning. And so for semester after semester, we would meet right before we would teach at 8:05 and just walk down the hallways. And some mornings we didn't say much at all, but he would always smile and he would bring tears to my eyes because of just the joy that he would emanate. And I just wanted to tell you that because it still sits with me and I will miss him terribly. I also just wanted to read something very short that brings him to mind. And as a minister, I will also tell you that I think this really struck me. Reminds me of Kojo. And it's a short piece that's written by Maureen Killoran. And it goes like this. We come together from the diversity of our grieving to gather in the warmth of this community, giving stubborn witness to our belief that in times of sadness, there is room for laughter. In times of darkness, there will always be light. May we hold fast to the conviction that what we do with our lives matters, and that a caring world is possible after all. And I wish the very best for Kojo. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to go front, but I just want to say quickly, Barry Spun from the Sociology Department. I knew Kojo starting back in the late 80s from NDRI. And I just want to say he was the sweetest guy. I'd see him off and on in the quarters, and he's a huge St. Louis Cardinals baseball fan, and we talk about that. I remember when he came to NDRI, he said that, yeah, he'd just been in Germany, and that somebody in Germany told him, said something about his first name, and maybe he'd want to change his first name coming to America, that people thought Kojo would be, I don't know, a little strange. So he changed it to Nana. Okay, Nana was, I knew him as Nana Dei. And it was only a little bit later that I learned his real name was Kojo. And a beautiful guy. I didn't know him that well, but a very, very sweet guy.
Nana is also his name.
Right.
What's that?
Nana is his name, it's
Oh, that-
part of his name.
Oh, that's part of his name. So
Yeah.
he used that
Yeah,
part
he
of his
used
name.
that
I
part.
see.
Would you like to?
How about Adontain? Is that not his name?
Adontain is his name
right.
too.
Yes, his name to life, yes.
Kojo Dei.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
Kojo came here, I think, with me the same year, in 1990. That's when we all started.
Yeah.
With a group of black faculty that came in group that time, because some of us who are older here know why we were brought in. So, but my perspective of him is from the African perspective. Professor Serena already mentioned planning to visit him in Ghana. That's what we all discuss. We talk about how, we, like the Americans say, we have two homes. We're here, but we have our family back over there. We put buildings up there. So that's the discussion we have all the time. It's sad. I know he has a building. I know about all that. Because we discuss all that. It's sad that he didn't get into that building. So that's the type of discussion we have. Well, how are you going to plan? How have you done this? How did you? Because I seem like they, in a way, stand like their mentor. Mentor because I lived in Nigeria, worked for 9 years after graduating from University of Madison here. I went back home, taught for a while before I came back. So I gave them certain strategies because the money here goes like you get it, it finishes right away. So I told them the strategies. You want to go every year, or since you are a teacher, every 6 months, go to credit union, borrow 5,000. Go and work 5,000 work and come back. And then you start paying back, then you take another 5,000. You go back. So by that way, you can finish your project. So that's part of the ideas we shared amongst ourselves. He's a very pleasant person, like everybody has talked about here. We visit ourselves, once in a while. I walk over to his office, we sit down there, we talk. And some days he comes and checks me out. Or some days he say, oh, Dave, I checked for you, you were not there. So, but what really, to show his commitment to John Jay and to our students. After he had his stroke, and I saw him coming to work, I was walking behind him, I knew that he was just not well. So I walked up to him, I said, Kojo, how are you feeling? He said, I'm okay. I said, you coming to school? He said, yes, I have to come to class. That's how committed he was to our students and to the job. So it's sad it had to happen to somebody like Kojo. But like we say in our African palace, God giveth and God has taken. So we just have to just tarry with the memory of which we have about him and feel good about that. And to the brothers and sisters who are here, I tell you, I express my condolence to all of you. But he was a good testimony of a brother or a sister which you can be proud of, having committed himself and what he did while he was here in John Jay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, let me say that, I aspire to follow in some ways in Kojo's footsteps in the sense that, he worked until the very last day. I mean, he probably was coming to work when he was struck, And honestly, when I gotta go, I'm hoping it's like that too, I don't want a prolonged sickness or a prolonged period of, fast like that is better, And he and I had met that Friday. He was supposed to come in for a class on the Monday, and we met on Friday to plan out the class and everything. He was very enthusiastic about it. So, I got to feel good about the fact that he was happy in what he was doing, until it was his time, And if I'm that fortunate, I'll be grateful. I'll be very happy if as fortunate as he was to do what I love till the day that I die. You know? Not everybody has that. You know? So grateful for that at least. You know? So, well, we don't want to twist in the arms to come up, but we're going to talk a lot. We do have food that we don't want to go to waste. So, oh, you want to come, Betsy?
One thing very briefly, that Kojo was a natural teacher, that somehow, whatever we would fall into conversation about, he always found some way of turning it into a lesson so that I learned something about African culture, which I very much appreciated, and it gave a depth to our relationship and a depth to my understanding of who he was as a person. That was very special and very welcome, and that was a very unusual person.
Just like to echo one thing that Serena said about his office. I always saw his office was this welcoming, bright spot and teeming with students who were interested in projects, and Kojo was bringing groups together to also leading them to go places they wanted to go. And he was just a remarkable person, and he was like a center.
You know, I want to comment on something Betsy said. Coach and I went out for coffee many times. We talked at great length in informal ways. We never gossiped. We never talked small talk. Every time he talked, there was like a little message. Like a little wisdom. I thought, oh, you know, I didn't think about that. It was never just the weather or some stupid thing. So I think that's something else that you mentioned that I had sort of forgotten about him. His wisdom came out in all sorts of small little interactions.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I am Kofi Doctor. Should you have in an academic community, so I should call myself Doctor. Yeah.
I'm just
Dr. Kofi Watson. I'm a brother-in-law of Kojo. And you know, it's funny. This morning as I was going to work, looking at the New York Times, so nobody will bother me on the train. You know, somehow I turned to the obituaries, and it struck me that life gets reduced to one sentence. You know, that if someone died, they say anthropology is 83 years old. Somebody wrote a book, 96 years old, and it got me thinking that, gee, that's what it is, that you work your life to sum it up into one sentence. But what you have done today is that where we started to say that our brother, our uncle, our brother-in-law was a professor at John Jay and died at age 69, you have expanded that into many, many, many sentences, and we thank you. We have a proverb, no African speaks without proverbs, right? and we have a cultural anthropologist. We have a proverb that the birds cannot thank the sky enough, and the worm cannot thank the earth enough. Okay? And so it is that we cannot thank you enough, because listening to your profuse and enthusiastic and heartfelt comments about Kojo, you have just expanded him beyond what we, the family members, knew of him. That the capsule that we knew as Kojo, you have really blown up into something much bigger. And there cannot be a better obituary than what we have witnessed today. And for that, we are eternally grateful to you all. And the memories that you have shared with us, we will also take, and I see that a videotape is being made. So thanks to the power of modern technology, we will share this with the bigger family members in Ghana. And in London. Okay, and Serena, your dream of visiting him in Ghana still lives.
Come in next year, you'll be the first one.
As our brother from Nigeria said, we always build houses, so we have all kinds of houses that we are welcome to stay. And one thing that Kojo left just for you, okay, is that he asked the MTA to build a railroad link across the Atlantic to Ghana. So you can very safe. Thank you. So we want to give you a hug like Kojo would have.
Yes, he would have.
Okay.
Tell me, what day were you born on?
Friday.
Friday, because he,
I'm Selma Henriquez, and I've been here at John Jay for 30 years. And I have had the very special privilege and pleasure to have known Kojo. He just exuded love and warmth, as has already been stated. I never ever saw Kojo without that smile on his face and that warm greeting, and he would call me, say, my sister. And we would talk about different things that he was doing, and not just here at the college, but in our communities. And he always had something to contribute. And I remember once Kojo was going up for a promotion. I don't know what promotion it was. And Marvy from the library and I were very concerned about Kojo and going through this process. And I called Kojo and I said, Kojo, well, what's going on with the papers? Because we would talk about that, because I knew how important it was. And Kojo's response was, well, I'm going to Disney World. And I have never, Marvy and I, we had that as a running joke around. Other people are going up for promotion and they're busy doing all of these things. And Kojo's response was, I'm going to Disney World. So whenever I see advertisements or I hear the word Disney World, Kojo comes to mind, but with a smile on his face, and I could almost see Kojo going to Disney World, and I so wanted to share that and to be part of this. And I apologize about the phone ringing because I'm not teaching today, and I was headed to another event, but I said I would not miss this because Kojo was just so warm, so special, so endearing to all of us who knew him. And may his spirit and the joy that he exuded be in our hearts to carry us on our journey. And I thank you. That was, yeah.
Well, thank you, folks. We really appreciate everything that y'all have to say.
Thanks to Joni for organizing.
Yeah, thanks very much. And, you know, please linger. Let's talk about Kojo some more. I'm sure we got lots of stories to share. And please eat up the food, too, because otherwise we don't know what to do with this. Thank you for coming tonight.